down in Washington right now. He's also running against not only a career video, it's a 10-minute video called Peter Schiff Was Right, and it takes 5 years. And Peter's sitting there on CNBC, and he's saying, we're going to have problems with this subprime. And they're all laughing at one guy, I'm sure you remember this, is just laughing the whole time like he's a total idiot, right? I would say, in my opinion, Peter's one of the 1,000 smartest guys in this country, and that's why I think it's so unique that we have him running. So in this video, he goes on and on. He says, I think subprime's going to be a problem. And then it was. Then he says, I think credit cards is going to be a real problem. Then it was. And it goes on and on. And everybody's making fun of him for 5 years. And everything he says comes true. So I won't say any more because he's so much better speaking than I. So welcome,
Thanks.
Peter.
But I understand basic economics, which really isn't all that difficult a subject. I mean, the problem is a lot of people get indoctrinated early in life in our public school system to believe in Keynesianism, and so they really can't see clearly. And of course, a lot of people that work in my industry, in Wall Street, get caught up in the mania and the hype and what they're selling to their clients. And they end up buying it themselves, and so they can't really see. So the fact that I was able to see some of this, some of the people I was arguing with were realtors. I mean, so they're not going to, they can't see a problem. Housing real estate's always a buy if you talk to a realtor.
One of the guys said, buy Bear Stearns stock. I said, well, that's a great idea.
Well, they all love the financials. Everybody on Wall Street loves the financials because that's their industry. They can't help it. They couldn't see that these companies were about to go bankrupt. But I mean, the reason I'm running is I understood what the problems were back then, and I understand that we've only made them worse since 2008, when we began to suffer the consequences of our bad policies. And unfortunately, we didn't learn from our mistakes at all. We're repeating our mistakes, only on a bigger scale, and now we are setting the country up for an even greater fall. Our leaders are trying to convince us that, everything is okay now because we stimulated, we bailed everybody out. People are spending again. We're back in the malls. We're using our credit cards. We're going deeper into debt, so everything is going to be okay. The government is bigger. We have all these new programs now. Well, it's not going to be okay because we're in this gigantic hole because we did exactly what they're doing. Because we spent money that we didn't have. We borrowed instead of saved. We allowed our manufacturing sector to deteriorate. We relied more on imported products, and we couldn't pay for them, so we borrowed the money to do that. And we built up an economy that was doomed to fail. And it was built not because of market forces, but because of government planning, because of central government planning out of Washington, where Washington decided what industries they wanted to promote, and how they were going to do it, and what activity they wanted to promote. Washington decided that they wanted to promote home ownership. How did they do that? They gave all kinds of tax breaks to people to buy homes. They guaranteed the mortgages so that lenders wouldn't care if the borrowers could actually repay the loan. They wanted us spending money, so the Fed slashed interest rates down to zero so that we can go out and borrow money, so that we can buy cars. Remember when we had 0% financing to start on cars, and people started taking out 6-7-year loans to buy a car? And everybody was spending borrowed money. In China, 90% of the people who buy cars, and China's car market is now bigger than ours. 90% of the people who buy cars in China pay cash. They don't even take out a loan. 85% of the people in America finance their cars with loans. The Chinese can actually afford cars. We can't. We don't want to encourage people to go into debt to buy automobiles or to buy furniture or appliances. People should pay for these things out of the money that they save and out of the interest that they've earned on their savings. But unfortunately, you can't get any interest on your savings, not because interest rates are zero. Why would anybody save? So we've got it backwards in China. They save half their income. We don't save any of our income. We spend it all. That's why we're in trouble. And government policy is simply digging us into a deeper hole. I mean, we're in the Grand Canyon of holes, and we're never going to get out of it until we understand the source of the problem. And that source is not capitalism. It's government intervention in capitalism. It's all the rules and regulations that distort market forces, that lead to these outcomes, that lead to excessive risk-taking and malinvestments, that create the booms, that make the bust necessary. But then when there's a bust, the government doesn't like that, And so they take action again to try to mitigate the severity of the bust, and all that does is make the underlying problems worse. And so instead of solving them, we exacerbate them, and then we have a bigger bust, and then we try more of the same thing. But the government doesn't care about that, because perversely, the worse the economy gets, the better the government likes it. Because now they have another reason to get reelected, because they can promise us a solution. The economy is bad because there wasn't enough government. So reelect me so I can pass new laws and pass more regulations and spend more money and make it all better. So they have a vested interest in failure, and that's why they continuously do it. But we need to send people to Washington that understand these problems and actually want them solved. They don't want to perpetuate them. If you're in Congress, you're voting in your own self-interest. That's their business. When you're a congressman or a senator, that's your business. And how do you keep your business going? You get reelected. It doesn't matter how much damage you do to the country. As I said, the more damage you do, the more likely it is that you will be reelected. And so that's how they approach everything. What is going to get me over this next election? They never want to admit how bad the problem is. They don't want people to have to swallow bad-tasting medicine on the grounds that, well, eventually you'll get better, because before it gets better, they're not going to be in office, because they're going to get voted out, because the public is going to express their frustration by not reelecting them. So you need to send people to Washington that don't want to get reelected, that only want to be there to deal with these problems in a constructive way. And that's why I'm running. I'm willing to stay in Washington for 6 years. That seems like a lifetime to me. I don't know why we want to be there more. If we can't solve these problems in 6 years, we're not going to solve them, because they will be unsolvable if we let this thing go on for another 6 years. At the rate we're borrowing money, at $1.5–2 trillion a year, 6 years from now we'll be another $10 trillion in debt. I mean, we're already 13 or 14 trillion, and that doesn't even count a lot of the off-budget items like the $6 trillion that we're on the hook for from Freddie and Fannie. It doesn't count all the unfunded liabilities of government pensions or Social Security or Medicare. I mean, there's no money for any of that. It's all debt. And so we need to start, getting out of this ditch now. And so, if I get to Washington, things are going to change. I mean, I'm not going to allow business as usual. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get there and I'm going to filibuster increasing the debt.